It was a busy Monday morning at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. The terminal was crowded with travelers rushing to their gates, dragging their luggage behind them. Among them was a well-dressed 7-year-old boy named Marcus Williams, walking hand in hand with his nanny, Sarah Johnson. Marcus wasn't like most children at the airport. He carried himself with natural confidence, wearing a neat blue blazer and perfectly pressed khaki pants. His father had taught him to always present himself well, even though he was just a child. Today, he was traveling with Sarah because his father, a busy businessman, had important meetings to attend. "Gate B7, that's our gate," Sarah said, checking their boarding passes for Atlantic Airways Flight 2317 to Los Angeles. Marcus nodded, clutching his favorite dinosaur backpack. He had flown many times before, but each flight still filled him with excitement. As they waited in the boarding area, Marcus watched the ground crew prepare the aircraft through the large windows. He knew a lot about planes. His father had taught him everything about them. "Sarah, look. They're loading the catering trucks now. That means we'll have good snacks on board," he said enthusiastically. When boarding began, Marcus and Sarah were among the first to enter the plane since they had first-class tickets. As they walked down the jet bridge, Sarah reminded Marcus about his medication. "Remember, sweetie, you need to have something to drink with your snack because of your blood sugar." Flight attendant Karen Mitchell stood at the aircraft door, greeting passengers with a practiced smile. However, when Marcus and Sarah approached, her smile faltered slightly. She looked at them with barely concealed suspicion, especially at Sarah, who was white, accompanying a black child. "Good morning," Marcus said cheerfully, showing her his boarding pass. Karen barely acknowledged him, giving only a curt nod while checking their documents. Marcus didn't let this dampen his spirits. His father had taught him that some people might treat him differently, but he should always maintain his dignity. They found their seats in 3A and 3B, settling in as other passengers boarded. Marcus was excited to see he had a window seat. "Sarah, can you see the baggage carts? They're loading all the suitcases now," he pointed out, his face pressed against the window. Once all passengers were seated and the flight was ready for departure, the flight attendants began their safety demonstration. Marcus watched attentively, even though he knew all the procedures by heart. After takeoff, as the seatbelt sign turned off, he started feeling the familiar signs of his blood sugar dropping. "Sarah, I think I need some juice," Marcus said quietly. Sarah checked her bag but realized she had packed his juice in the checked luggage by mistake. "Don't worry, sweetie. We'll ask the flight attendant for some juice when they start the service." 20 minutes into the flight, Karen Mitchell began pushing the service cart down the aisle. When she reached their row, Marcus politely raised his hand. "Excuse me, Miss Flight Attendant, may I please have an apple juice? I have low blood sugar and need something to drink." Karen looked at him with an expression of annoyance. "We haven't started the beverage service yet," she said coldly. "You'll have to wait your turn like everyone else." Sarah tried to explain the situation. "He has a medical condition that requires—" "I said wait your turn," Karen interrupted sharply. "I don't appreciate people trying to get special treatment." Marcus felt confused and hurt by her tone, but remembered what his father always told him about staying calm in difficult situations. "I'm sorry, but it's really important. I can show you my medical card." Before he could finish his sentence, several other passengers nearby started paying attention to the interaction. They could clearly see the unnecessary hostility in Karen's behavior toward the well-mannered young boy. Little did Karen Mitchell know that her actions in the next few moments would not only change her life, but would also spark a chain of events that would transform the entire airline industry. The simple request for a juice box was about to become much more than just a routine passenger interaction. As Marcus reached for his medical card in his backpack, no one could have predicted how the next few minutes would unfold, or that this flight would soon make headlines across the country for all the wrong reasons. As Marcus reached into his backpack for his medical card, Karen Mitchell's face twisted with impatience. The 7-year-old's fingers trembled slightly as he pulled out the small laminated card that explained his medical condition. His father had always told him to keep it handy for emergencies. "See, it says right here that I need." Marcus began politely, but before he could finish, Karen's hand shot out suddenly, slapping his hand away from the service cart. The medical card flew from his grip and landed in the aisle. The sharp sound of the slap echoed through the first-class cabin. "I told you to wait." Karen snapped, her voice filled with anger. I don't care what kind of card you have, you people always think you deserve special treatment. The cabin fell silent. Several passengers gasped in shock. Sarah, who had been watching the situation unfold with growing concern, immediately jumped to action. With one hand, she reached for her phone in her purse, and with the other, she protectively wrapped her arm around Marcus's shoulders. Did you just hit this child? Sarah's voice was steady but filled with controlled anger. She had already started recording on her phone. Do you realize what you've just done? Marcus sat very still in his seat, his eyes wide with surprise and hurt. A small red mark was forming on his hand where Karen had slapped it. He wasn't crying. His father had taught him to be strong, but his lower lip trembled slightly. I didn't hit him, Karen said defensively, looking around at the other passengers who were now all watching intently. He was reaching for the cart. That's against our safety procedures. I was just following protocol. A businessman in seat 4C stood up. That's a lie. We all saw you slap that child's hand. I'm recording this too. He held up his phone, which had indeed been capturing the entire incident. More passengers joined in, their voices rising in anger. This is absolutely disgusting. Someone get the captain. I want her badge number. That poor child did nothing wrong. Karen's face paled as she realized how many passengers were recording the incident. She tried to push her service cart forward, but another passenger, a woman in seat 3D across the aisle, blocked her path. You're not going anywhere until your supervisor comes here, the woman said firmly. She turned to Marcus with a gentle smile. Sweetie, are you okay? Does your hand hurt? Marcus shook his head bravely, though his hand still stung. I'm okay, he said quietly. I just needed some juice for my blood sugar. Sarah was already pressing the call button repeatedly. She had worked for the Williams family long enough to know that this situation needed to be documented properly. She continued recording as she spoke clearly into her phone. This is on Atlantic Airways Flight 2317, and the flight attendant's name tag reads Karen Mitchell. She just physically assaulted the 7-year-old child. The lead flight attendant, James Chen, hurried over from business class. What's going on here? He asked, looking concerned at the crowd of upset passengers. Your flight attendant just slapped my charge's hand, Sarah explained, her voice trembling with anger. He was simply showing her his medical card for his low blood sugar condition. Karen interrupted, her voice high and defensive. He was being disruptive. These people need to learn to follow rules. I was just maintaining order on my flight. These people? Several passengers repeated in disbelief, recording Karen's words. James's face turned serious as he quickly assessed the situation. Ma'am, he addressed Karen, please return to the galley immediately. I'll handle this section. Turning to Marcus and Sarah, he added softly, I'll bring some juice right away, and we'll need to file a report about this incident. As Karen reluctantly pushed her cart back, passengers began sending their videos to Atlantic Airways customer service. Some were already posting the incident on social media, their fingers typing furiously on their phones. What none of them knew, not even Karen Mitchell, was that those videos were about to reach someone very important. In a boardroom thousands of miles away, Michael Williams's phone was about to light up with notifications about his son, and the comfortable world Karen Mitchell knew as a flight attendant was about to change dramatically. The incident had lasted less than 5 minutes, but its consequences would echo far beyond this flight, leading to changes that would reshape how airlines handled discrimination and customer service forever. The atmosphere in first class remained tense as James Chen, the lead flight attendant, quickly returned with an apple juice box for Marcus. The 7-year-old's hand still showed a faint red mark from Karen's slap, but he remained calm and composed, just as his father had taught him. Here you go, young man, James said kindly, placing a small packet of cookies alongside the juice. I'm very sorry about what happened. How are you feeling? His genuine concern was evident in his voice. Marcus managed a small smile. Thank you, sir. I'm okay now. He took small sips of his juice while Sarah kept one arm protectively around his shoulders. The nanny was still recording everything, knowing Mr. Williams would want to see exactly what had happened to his son. In the galley where Karen had retreated, she was frantically typing on her phone, sending messages to her union representative. She could hear the growing murmurs of passengers discussing the incident, and her hands shook slightly as she realized how badly she had messed up. A distinguished-looking woman in a business suit approached James. "I'm Patricia Thompson, a civil rights attorney," she said, handing him her business card. "I witnessed everything, and I'd be happy to provide a formal statement. What happened here today was completely unacceptable." James nodded gravely, taking her card. "Thank you, Ms. Thompson. I'll need to gather statements from several witnesses. This is a serious incident that will require a full investigation." Meanwhile, social media was already buzzing with the first uploaded videos. Passengers who had purchased in-flight Wi-Fi were sharing the incident in real time. Hashtag Atlantic Airways flight attendant just assaulted a black child in first class. He just asked for juice for his medical condition. This is disgusting. Hashtag racism, hashtag discrimination. Witnessed a horrible discrimination on at Atlantic Airways right now. The face slapped a young boy's hand and made racist comments. Everyone is recording. Back in the cabin, other flight attendants had taken over Karen's duties, trying to continue the drink service as normally as possible. But passengers were more interested in sharing their accounts of what happened than ordering beverages. Sarah was on the phone with Marcus's regular doctor, speaking in hushed tones. "Yes, Dr. Roberts, his blood sugar is stable now. But I want to document any potential stress responses. Yes, I'll send you the video right away." James returned with incident report forms. "Ma'am," he addressed Sarah, "I'll need you to fill this out. We're also noting all the witnesses who have come forward. The captain has been informed, and he's already radioed ahead to have airline representatives meet us at the gate." Marcus looked up from his juice. "Is Miss Karen going to get in trouble?" he asked quietly. Even after what had happened, he showed concern for others, a trait he'd inherited from his father. "Don't worry about that right now, sweetheart," Sarah said gently. "Let's focus on making sure you're okay." More passengers continued to approach their seats, offering their support and contact information as witnesses. A grandmother from 2B brought Marcus a coloring book from her carry-on to help distract him. A young college student shared her pack of cookies. The kindness of strangers was helping to ease the tension. In the cockpit, the captain was making a series of urgent calls through the aircraft's communication system. The airline's customer service department was already overwhelmed with calls and social media messages about the incident. What nobody on the plane realized was that these messages were being flagged as highest priority because of Marcus's last name, Williams. Karen peeked out from the galley, her face pale as she watched the scene unfold. She saw passengers comforting Marcus, flight attendants apologizing to everyone affected, and James collecting witness statements. The gravity of her actions was finally sinking in. "I was just following procedures," she whispered to herself, but even she didn't believe it anymore. The look of fear in Marcus's eyes when she had slapped his hand would haunt her for a long time. Little did Karen know, but at that very moment, in a luxurious office in Atlantic Airways headquarters, Michael Williams was about to see the video of his son being slapped. The next few hours would change not just Karen's career, but the entire airline's approach to customer service and discrimination. As the flight continued towards Los Angeles, no one could predict the storm that was brewing on the ground. The incident that had lasted mere minutes would soon become a turning point in airline history, all because Karen Mitchell didn't know who Marcus Williams really was. Michael Williams sat in his large corner office on the top floor of Atlantic Airways headquarters in Los Angeles. The 45-year-old CEO was in the middle of an important board meeting, discussing the airline's expansion plans for the next year. As the majority owner of the airline, these meetings were crucial, but today something felt off. He couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to check on Marcus. And so, if we add 10 new routes to Asia, the presentation was interrupted by a sudden burst of urgent message notifications on Michael's phone. At first, he tried to ignore them, but they kept coming, one after another. "Excuse me for a moment," Michael said politely to the board members. When he picked up his phone, his heart nearly stopped. There were over 50 messages, many containing video links with similar titles. "Discrimination on Atlantic Airways," "Flight Attendant Assaults Child," "Racist Incident on Flight 2317. Flight 2317, that was Marcus's flight. With trembling hands, Michael opened the first video. The board members watched in confusion as their usually composed CEO's face transformed from concern to shock, and then to controlled anger. The video showed his son, this precious Marcus, being slapped by a flight attendant. Meeting adjourned, Michael said quietly, his deep voice carrying such authority that no one dared to question him. As the board members quickly gathered their things, his assistant, Jennifer, rushed in. "Sir, I've been trying to reach you. There's an incident on Flight 2317 involving Marcus. Social media is exploding with." "I've seen it," Michael interrupted, his voice tight with emotion. "Get me everything you can about flight attendant Karen Mitchell, her complete employment history, performance reviews, everything. And get my private jet ready immediately." "But sir, Flight 2317 won't land for another 3 hours," Jennifer reminded him. "Exactly. I want to be there when it does." Michael stood up, his impressive 6'2" frame radiating authority. He walked to the window, looking out at the planes taking off and landing at LAX. One of those planes carried his son, who had just experienced exactly what Michael had worked so hard to protect him from. Michael thought back to when he had bought controlling shares in Atlantic Airways 5 years ago. Many had been surprised that a black man had become the majority owner of a major airline, but he had worked hard for this. He had started as a baggage handler in college, worked his way up through various airline positions, made smart investments, and eventually built enough wealth to buy the airline. He had done it all to create a better world for Marcus, to show him that nothing was impossible. Now, on his own airline, his son had faced discrimination. "Sir," Jennifer interrupted his thoughts, "I have Karen Mitchell's file. She's been with the airline for 12 years. There are 2 previous complaints about rude behavior, but nothing this serious." Michael nodded, then picked up his phone to call Sarah. The nanny answered on the first ring. "Mr. Williams, I'm so sorry this happened. I tried to." "Sarah, it's not your fault," Michael assured her, his voice gentle. "How's Marcus?" "He's being so brave, sir. Other passengers have been very kind. He's having some juice now, and his blood sugar is stable. Put him on, please." There was a rustling sound. Then Marcus's small voice came through. "Daddy?" Michael's heart clenched. "Hey, champion. Are you okay?" "Yes, Daddy. My hand doesn't hurt anymore. I remembered what you said about staying calm when people aren't nice." Michael closed his eyes, feeling a mix of pride and pain. "That's my boy. Daddy will see you very soon, okay? I love you." "Love you too, Daddy." After ending the call, Michael turned to Jennifer. "Contact our PR department. I want a press conference scheduled for when the flight lands. And get me the diversity and inclusion training records for all our flight staff." As his team rushed to follow his orders, Michael picked up a framed photo from his desk. It showed him and Marcus at an airport, both smiling broadly next to an Atlantic Airways plane. He had bought this airline to build a legacy for his son, and now he would use this incident to make sure no other child faced what Marcus had experienced today. "Karen Mitchell," he whispered, putting the photo down. "You picked the wrong child on the wrong airline on the wrong day." As Michael Williams's private jet touched down at Los Angeles International Airport, a team of Atlantic Airways executives waited nervously on the tarmac. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the runway, but nobody noticed the beautiful sunset. They were all too focused on the crisis at hand. "Flight 2317 lands in 40 minutes, sir," Jennifer reported, checking her tablet as they walked into the private terminal. The space quickly transformed into a makeshift command center, with phones ringing and staff members rushing around with urgent messages. Robert Chen, the head of human resources, approached Michael with a thick folder. "Sir, we've reviewed Karen Mitchell's entire employment history. There's something you need to see." He pulled out several papers. "She's had 3 unofficial complaints about discriminatory behavior that were never properly addressed." Michael's jaw tightened. Never properly addressed. How did this slip through our system? "The previous management team apparently buried these complaints," Robert explained, looking uncomfortable. "They were filed by minority passengers, but were dismissed as misunderstandings." The airline's chief of public relations, Lisa Martinez, joined them with more concerning news. "Sir, the videos have gone viral. We're getting calls from every major news network. They'd all want to know how Atlantic Airways will respond to this incident." Michael stood up straight, his decision made. "Set up the press conference in the main terminal. But first, I want to meet my son's flight at the gate." The terminal buzzed with activity as staff members quickly arranged everything. Security teams cleared a path from Gate 23 to the press conference area. Local news vans were already gathering outside the terminal. "Jennifer, what's our current social media situation?" Michael asked as they walked. "It's intense, sir. The hashtag Atlantic Airways discrimination is trending nationwide. But there's also growing support for Marcus. People are sharing their own stories of discrimination on airlines." Michael nodded thoughtfully. This wasn't just about his son anymore. This was a chance to make real change in the airline industry. The airline's legal team arrived with documents in hand. "Mr. Williams, we prepared several options for disciplinary action," the head lawyer began. "This isn't just about punishing one flight attendant," Michael interrupted. "We need systemic change. I want a complete overhaul of our training programs. Every employee, from baggage handlers to pilots, will undergo new anti-bias training." The executives exchanged glances. This would be expensive. "And," Michael continued, "I want a new customer service policy that specifically addresses medical needs and discrimination. No child should ever be denied medical assistance on my airline." As they reached Gate 23, the flight status board showed Flight 2317 was 10 minutes from landing. Michael turned to his team. "Here's what's going to happen," he said firmly. "When that plane lands, I want Karen Mitchell escorted to HR for immediate suspension pending investigation. The other crew members will give written statements. And I want every passenger who witnessed the incident to be offered full refunds and first-class upgrades on their next flights." Lisa raised her hand. "Sir, what should I tell the press?" Michael's eyes showed determination. "Tell them the truth. Tell them that Atlantic Airways failed today. Tell them that the owner's own son faced discrimination on our airline. But also tell them that this ends today. We're going to set a new standard for how airlines handle diversity and inclusion." Jennifer's phone buzzed. "Flight 2317 has landed, sir." Michael straightened his tie and checked his reflection in a window. He needed to look strong for Marcus, but professional for the cameras that would surely be rolling. "One more thing," he added, turning to his team. "I want every parent who's ever had a child experience discrimination on any airline to know that Atlantic Airways hears them. We're going to create a special customer service unit dedicated to families and medical needs." The gate area was now filled with press and curious onlookers. Word had spread that the airline's owner was personally handling this incident. Phones were out, recording everything. As the plane taxied to the gate, Michael Williams stood tall, ready to face whatever came next. In his pocket, he held the small toy plane Marcus had given him last Father's Day. It reminded him of why he was doing this. This wasn't just about one flight attendant's mistake anymore. This was about changing an entire industry's culture. And it was starting right here, right now, at Gate 23. The passenger bridge slowly connected to Flight 2317. Michael Williams stood at the gate, his heart beating faster as he waited for the door to open. Behind him, cameras flashed as reporters tried to capture every moment of this unfolding story. Inside the plane, Karen Mitchell was in the galley, nervously fixing her uniform. She had no idea what awaited her. The lead flight attendant, James Chen, approached her with a serious expression. "Karen, you need to stay on board after passengers deplane," James said firmly. "HR representatives are waiting to speak with you." Karen's face turned pale. "It wasn't that serious," she protested weakly. The boy was being difficult. "Stop talking," James interrupted. "You've done enough damage today." The aircraft door opened, and passengers began to exit. Many of them stopped in surprise when they saw Michael Williams standing at the gate, surrounded by airline executives. Some recognized him from news articles and business magazines. Sarah appeared in the doorway with Marcus holding her hand. The moment Michael saw his son, all his corporate composure melted away. He rushed forward, dropping to one knee to hug his boy. "Daddy!" Marcus exclaimed, running into his father's arms. The cameras went crazy, capturing this emotional moment. Michael checked his son's hand where Karen had slapped it. Though the red mark had faded, his anger flared again at the thought of someone hurting his child. "Mr. Williams," Sarah said, her voice shaking, "I'm so sorry I couldn't prevent." "You did everything right, Sarah," Michael assured her. "You protected him and documented everything. Thank you." The other passengers were now stopping to watch, many pulling out their phones to record. They quickly realized this wasn't just any concerned father. This was the owner of Atlantic Airways himself. Michael stood up, still holding Marcus's hand. "I want to thank all the passengers who stood up for my son today," he said loudly. "Your kindness and quick action to record this incident will help us make important changes." Karen, who had been watching from the aircraft door, felt her knees go weak as realization hit her. The child she had slapped, the one she had treated so poorly, was the owner's son, her face drained of all color. Michael noticed her in the doorway. "Ms. Mitchell," he called out, his voice carrying across the gate area. "Please come here." Karen walked slowly down the jet bridge, feeling like she was walking to her doom. When she reached the gate area, she could barely look at Marcus or Michael. "Sir, I didn't know," she began. "That he was my son." Michael's voice was calm but powerful. Would it have made a difference? Should it make a difference? He looked around at the gathering crowd. Should any child be treated differently based on who their parents are or what they look like? Karen started to shake. "No, sir. I'm sorry. I just—" "You're right about one thing," Michael continued. "You didn't know. You didn't know that this 7-year-old boy has a medical condition. You didn't know that he's the son of your airline's owner. But most importantly, you didn't know that your actions today would force us to look at the bigger problem of discrimination in air travel." Tears started rolling down Karen's cheeks. The cameras continued to flash as Michael spoke. "This isn't just about you, Ms. Mitchell. This is about every passenger who has ever faced discrimination on any airline. This is about every parent who is worried about how their child will be treated because of their race." Marcus tugged at his father's hand. "Daddy, don't be too mad at Miss Karen. She looks really sorry now." The sincerity in Marcus's voice made several onlookers tear up. Even in this moment, the child showed more compassion than the adult who had hurt him. Michael squeezed his son's hand proudly, then he turned back to Karen. "You're suspended pending a full investigation, but more importantly, you're going to be part of the change we're making. You'll be the first to go through our new training program, and you'll share your story to help others learn from this mistake." As security officers arrived to escort Karen to the HR department, Michael lifted Marcus into his arms. "Let's go home, champion," he said softly. "We have a lot of work to do tomorrow." The crowd parted as they walked away, many people applauding. This confrontation wasn't just about punishment, it was about transformation, and it was only the beginning. 1 week after the incident, Michael Williams stood in Atlantic Airways' largest training center. The room was packed with journalists, airline employees, and civil rights leaders. Large screens behind him showed the company's new slogan, "Flying Together, Treating Everyone Right." Marcus sat in the front row, wearing a miniature pilot's uniform that the airline's pilots had specially made for him. Sarah sat beside him, proudly watching as Michael prepared to announce the biggest changes in the airline's history. "Last week, something happened that opened our eyes," Michael began, his voice firm and clear. "My son was discriminated against on our own airline. At first, I was just an angry father. But then I realized, if this could happen to my son, on my airline, what about all the other children? What about all the passengers who don't have a voice?" The room was completely silent as he continued. "Today, I'm announcing the Marcus Williams Initiative for Equal Treatment in Air Travel. This is a $50 million program that will change how our airline treats every passenger." On the screens, pictures appeared showing the new changes. New training centers in every major hub, special care teams for passengers with medical needs, a customer service app that could record and report discrimination instantly, body cameras for all flight attendants, a scholarship program for minority students wanting to work in aviation. In the back of the room, Karen Mitchell sat quietly. After a week of suspension and deep reflection, she looked different, humbled and changed. She had spent hours talking to civil rights experts and had written a long apology letter to Marcus. "Ms. Mitchell," Michael said, surprising everyone by calling her up to the stage. Karen walked up nervously, her hands shaking. "Ms. Mitchell made a terrible mistake," Michael continued. "But instead of just firing her, we decided to do something different. Karen, would you like to tell everyone what you've learned?" Karen stepped up to the microphone, tears in her eyes. "A week ago, I thought I was just following rules, but I wasn't. I was letting my prejudices control my actions. I hurt a child who needed help, and I'm deeply ashamed. She turned to face Marcus. I've spent this week learning about unconscious bias, medical awareness, and proper customer service. But my biggest lesson came from you, Marcus. Your forgiveness taught me more than any training could. Marcus smiled and waved at her, making several people in the audience tear up. Michael returned to the microphone. Starting next month, every airline employee will go through our new training program. We're also creating a special children's program called Flying Friends to teach young passengers about kindness and acceptance in the air. He gestured to a group of people standing to the side. We've hired diversity experts, medical professionals, and customer service specialists to completely rebuild our training. And yes, Ms. Mitchell will be sharing her story in every session, helping others learn from her mistake. The room burst into applause as Michael revealed more changes. Free medical alert cards for all passengers with health conditions. Priority boarding for families with special needs. A new customer bill of rights. A diverse advisory board to review all discrimination complaints. Regular cultural sensitivity training for all staff. But we're not stopping there, Michael announced. We're challenging other airlines to join us. Today, I'm proud to say that 5 other major airlines have agreed to adopt our new standards. He walked over to Marcus and lifted him onto the stage. My son's experience opened our eyes to a problem that needed fixing. But it's not just about one incident or one airline. It's about changing how we treat each other in the skies. Marcus stepped up to the microphone, his voice small but clear. I just wanted some juice because I didn't feel good. Now Daddy's making sure all kids can get help when they need it. The room filled with emotional applause. Reporters wiped tears from their eyes as they took notes. Even Karen was crying openly now. Michael hugged his son close. This is just the beginning, he said. From today, Atlantic Airways isn't just about getting people from place to place. It's about treating everyone with dignity and respect at every altitude. As the cameras flashed and the applause continued, it was clear that a simple request for juice had sparked a revolution in air travel, and it all started because one flight attendant didn't know she was discriminating against the owner's son. Sometimes, the biggest changes come from the smallest moments. This was one of those times. The main terminal at Los Angeles International Airport was decorated with colorful balloons and banners. A large sign read, "Celebrating 6 months of the Marcus Williams Initiative." Hundreds of people gathered for a special ceremony marking the program's success. Marcus, now 8 years old, stood confidently at the podium wearing his favorite pilot's uniform. In the past 6 months, he had become the young face of change in the airline industry. Behind him sat his proud father, Michael Williams, along with airline executives, civil rights leaders, and surprisingly, Karen Mitchell. "Hi everyone," Marcus began, his bright smile lighting up the room. 6 months ago, I was scared to ask for juice on a plane. Now, look what happened. He pointed to the wall where new signs showed smiling children of all backgrounds with the words, "Need help? Just ask." The audience laughed warmly. Among them were many families holding special medical cards, part of the new Sky Care program that Atlantic Airways had created after the incident. Michael stepped up beside his son. In just 6 months, our Marcus Williams initiative has helped over 100,000 passengers with medical needs. But the numbers I'm most proud of are these. He gestured to the screen behind him. 0 discrimination complaints in 6 months. 15,000 employees completed new training. 12 other airlines joined the program. 1,000 children enrolled in the Flying Friends program. Customer satisfaction up by 45%. Karen Mitchell, who now worked in the airline's training department, stood up to share her story. She looked different now, more humble, more understanding, and genuinely changed. 6 months ago, I made a terrible mistake, she began. But thanks to the Williams family's forgiveness and guidance, I didn't just lose my job, I found a new purpose. I trained over 3,000 airline staff members, sharing my story and teaching them what real customer service means. The audience applauded as Karen turned to Marcus. This young man taught me the biggest lesson of my life. Now, I teach others to be better. A video started playing on the big screen, showing clips from the past 6 months. Flight attendants helping children with medical needs. Diverse crews welcoming passengers. Training sessions in progress. Happy families boarding planes. Marcus visiting different airports to inspire young travelers. Sarah, who still worked as Marcus's nanny, wiped tears from her eyes as she watched. She remembered the scary day 6 months ago, but now it felt like a distant memory. And now, Michael announced, "We have a special surprise. Marcus, come here, son." Marcus walked over to his father, looking curious. Michael pulled out a small box and opened it. Inside was a golden pin shaped like airplane wings. "This is the first Young Ambassador of Kindness pin," Michael explained. "From today, we'll give these to children who show exceptional kindness and help others during their flights." As he pinned it on Marcus's uniform, the crowd stood up cheering. Photographers captured the moment as father and son hugged. But there was one more surprise. A group of pilots walked in, rolling a large cake shaped like an airplane. On it was written, "Thank you, Marcus, you changed the sky." "And that's not all," one pilot said. "We've named our newest plane Spirit of Marcus to remind everyone that one brave boy's story changed everything." Marcus's eyes grew wide with excitement. Through the terminal windows, everyone could see a brand new Atlantic Airways plane with his name painted on the side in bright letters. Karen walked over to Marcus and knelt beside him. "You know what's amazing?" she said softly. "That day, I thought I was just dealing with another passenger. I didn't know you were the owner's son. But what I learned is that it shouldn't matter whose son you are. Everyone deserves respect and kindness." Michael put his hand on Karen's shoulder. "Sometimes the best changes come from our biggest mistakes," he said. This story could have ended with anger and punishment. Instead, it ended with learning and growth. As everyone enjoyed the cake and celebrated, Marcus looked out at the planes taking off and landing. His father's airline had changed, and he had helped make it happen, all because he needed some juice one day on a flight. "Daddy," he whispered, tugging his father's sleeve, "can we make more good changes?" Michael smiled at his son. "Champion, we're just getting started. The sky's the limit." And so, what began as a scary moment for a little boy became a story of transformation, forgiveness, and positive change, not just for one airline, but for the entire aviation industry. All because a flight attendant didn't know she was discriminating against the owner's son.